to ask you what decision makers, educators, and learners can do to prevent or reduce violence and bullying. And maybe you have an example of a successful anti-bullying program. Please, Frida.
And thank you for that, those insights on cyberbullying as well, which is of course very integrated in the school's life. Kids themselves don't make a difference between in real life bullying and cyberbullying. For them, it's part of their world. So it's very important that we address that issue as well. Well, I'm going to say something about programs. There are many anti-bullying programs around the world. There are some very big ones that have implemented in many countries. There are well documented effects of them, and they have small yet well documented effects in the ordering of reducing bullying between 15 to 20%. And when it comes to a big population, I mean that's many children. So I don't want to say that anti-bullying programs are that the effect sizes are too small, but they are. There is room for improvement. But looking at a country, if you implement a program and you get the bullying rates to go down by 15 or 20%, that can mean hundreds and thousands of children. So I mean, it is a good way to work, but it can't be the only way. I think that can be my take-home message. Please use an anti-bullying program if you think that it's suitable in your local context, in your municipality, in your school, in your country. But don't rest on that and feel like, okay, we've checked out the bullying prevention issue, so it's the only thing that you're doing, because in most cases you need to do more than just implement a program. And these effects can also be very good and higher in certain local contexts and certain schools, and be lower effects in others. So that's also something that you need to consider, that this is just an average effect. It can be explained by the national local conditions of schools, but also how well you implement the program, how well invested the school is in implementing it. But there are, of course, several things that you can do, but I think that Yang Feng also went through a lot of that when talking about the whole education approach, which is a very well underbuilt from the scientific committee who developed that framework of the whole education approach. So I think that is a very good way, also almost a checklist that you can see, is this something that we have in our context? Is it something that we can take steps towards implementing or making it happen? The different 9 components of the whole education approach. But I would like to say something about the report that the WHO came out with in 2022 that was actually on what works to prevent online violence against children. But I'm bringing it up because it also showed that preventative education programs for children have been shown to increase safety and health in general, as well as reduce both bullying in school and online. So it works both for violence and bullying in school, but also works on cyberbullying. And the evidence shows, very robust evidence, that the most successful educational programs are based on strengthening the skills of children and young people. And there are some core components that these successful programs have in them. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that. So if we from an early age strengthen the skills of children, we will help them, we will train them, we will equip them with skills that they can use both offline and online, on the way to school, in those dark corners in the school, every part of their everyday life that they spend time in. And solving skills are one of those, to work with assertiveness and self-efficacy and resistance to peer pressures, to enhance empathy and to train empathy. It is shown that children are born with empathy. Before we thought that it was something that you learned at a certain age, but there are now evidence that you're born with empathy, but you need to train empathy, you need to practice empathy, you need to be around other people to be able to enhance your empathy, and to train perspective taking, to look at self-regulation and emotion management and impulse control is very important as well, to train children in conflict resolution and de-escalation, and also help seeking, to look to get kids to actually talk to us adults when something is happening, to seek help for their problems. Bystander or defender mobilization is very important. There's tons of research on the bystander aspect of bullying. Most bullying occurs when other students are present, and if someone says something, most bullying situation stops if someone says something or do something, and it doesn't have to be to step in a fight. It can be to just there can be much smaller things, or telling a trusted adult. Social norm intrusion, and also sex education and substance abuse educations are also part of these core components that have shown to show results both for online and offline bullying and violence. So programs are great, but I also want to share a little work that is been done right now. This is a picture from the World Anti-Bullying Forum 2 weeks ago in the Raleigh in the United States, in North Carolina, where Professor Christina Salmivali did a keynote presentation. And Professor Salmivali is the developer of the Kiva program, very successful anti-bullying program. But she is also now interested in looking at what doesn't work. As you can see in her presentation, she says, we want to provide good news, we want empowerment and hope, and we want our programs to work. Thus, we report what works on average. But investigating average effects of prevention and intervention programs, it doesn't move the field forward. So right now, she's engaged in a huge research project where they're looking at what doesn't work in bullying prevention and which cases of bullying keeps on happening. Even though there's a successful prevention program in place in school, there are still some students that are still being bullied. Why? How do we solve that? So it's an ongoing research project, but I think it's very important also to learn from failure and not only from success. And that is something that Yongfeng also mentioned when it comes to the whole education approach, that it's important for every school, for every teacher, for every setting, also to look at what interventions have we put in place, what prevention strategies do we have, how did it work, and if it's not working, what can we do differently, to also to look at that in the local context, to learn from that and to talk to the students and see how they experience it. And I also wanted to show this picture because when we talk about bullying, it comes down to also what is bullying. To be able to decide what we should do about it, we need to also talk about why is it occurring, why is it happening. It doesn't occur in a vacuum. It doesn't occur out of nowhere. And this is a picture to show the analogy of the old story or the old poem about 6 blind men around an elephant. In that story, it's men around an elephant who's in the dark trying to find out what they are touching. And someone is touching the tail and think it's a snake, and someone is touching the leg and think it's a tree, and someone's touching other parts of the elephant and interpret it as different things. But it isn't until they start talking to each other in the dark and explain what they are feeling and seeing and how they are experiencing it that they actually can see that it is an elephant. And it's the same thing with bullying. It's such a complex phenomenon. So the different views or the different perspectives of bullying or and why it occurs, if it's about relationships in the group, or if it's the structural power relations in society, or if it's about individuals, we need to start talk to each other and to see the whole picture in order to see the complex um, perspectives of the bullying as a problem. And in the beginning, we heard Nicola talk about that school is a part of the society, different layers in society. And I want to finish by saying something also about risk and protective factors. Because if we have protective factors in place and we have fewer risk factors, we can increase the possibilities for a safe and inclusive environment without bullying. And of course, risk factors are associated with a high prevalence of bullying, while protective factors buffer or protect against bullying and are associated with low prevalence of bullying. And as Nicola talked about, when it comes to the school, that school is a part of connected to different parts of society. It's the same thing when you look at bullying as a problem. And I saw before that there was a question in the chat about the theoretical frameworks of bullying prevention research. And there are many different, but one of the most used one and one of the most common ways to look at bullying is through the theory of the social ecological framework, where you look at bullying in different systems of society. This is from Bronfenbrenner in 1979, who came up with the social ecological model, but it has been adapted and used by, for example, Dorothy Espelage and others after to look at bullying. So basically, you can look at bullying from the macro system when it comes to cultural ideas and customs and socioeconomical status and so on. The exosystem, which is formal and informal social structures that can influence the individual, and the mesosystem, for example, where school climate, we can find school climate and relationships between students and teachers, but also between peer-to-peer relationships. In the microsystem, where you have like direct relationships between different individuals. And there are also risk and protective factors in each of these parts of the system, and they influence each other and get influenced by each other as well. So it is a complex way of looking at it. But if I should also only leave you with one of these messages to take home, is to look at the different parts of this system, look at what kind of protective factors we can implement on each level, and also if we can see what kind of risk factors we have on each level. If you do that, you have come a long way, more than most people do when it comes to bullying prevention. And if you should only start by focusing on one thing, it comes down to relationships. And I've been around the bullying prevention community, the international community, for 15 years now. And sometimes I ask both students, and I ask researchers, and I ask practitioners, if you can only do one thing. If I ask the principal that, if you can only do one thing in your school when it comes to bullying prevention, or ask the most renowned bullying prevention researchers, what's the one advice you would give to a school? They always say something about the relationships. Positive relationships between students and between students and teachers have been shown to contribute to not only success in schoolwork and provide that sense of belonging. It also is like one of the strongest protective factors against mental health problems and of course bullying. So work on the relationships, get to know every kid, make them feel seen and important, and have trusted but strong relationships between teachers and students, then we will have come a long way. Thank you.